2024 has come and gone, and with it, another year of animated storytelling. And yeah, I won't lie, this year has definitely been a tough one for the animation industry. Between all the strikes, cancellations, and releases, this year has definitely been one that I certainly won't forget anytime soon. Now, with all that out the way, let's get into the ranking.
The pack's never gonna respect me?
Respect doesn't happen overnight. It has to be earned.
Okay, so I might be showing a little patriotic bias here, but with there only really being 2 Australian animated films to release this year, I did feel that I had to choose something. And hey, this is at least a sequel to the original film. And yeah man, I do wish that Oz had a larger, stronger animation industry. Also yes, I could have put my 1 or 2 here in this spot instead, but since my review, I have been caught up on that film's controversial development, and I am not happy about it. Of course an effort has been made with this film, although the limits of its animation and its budget are fairly clear. And again, some of these budget-related problems also managed to seep their way into the writing of the film, unfortunately. Again, I do feel like this film just didn't have the budget it needed to really tell the type of story it wanted to go for, and be the type of film that you've seen come out of the industry. But with that said, I will say that the film does make an effort, and that for what the film is, it's perfectly serviceable.
I know you love your dada. Go on, say it. Dada. Dada.
Yes, of course he loves you. He just doesn't show it on his face. Or with his body language. Right, Fruit Jr., come on.
It's another Despicable Me film, and more importantly, just another Illumination film. Doing what Illumination has always done well, and doing what they've always done, well, subpar to say the least. Honestly, I'm just not interested in this franchise anymore. The first film was alright, and some of the memes were pretty funny, but that's just about it. Yes, Illumination has always managed to make sure that they've put their animation together competently, although it's never been something that I've found too interesting compared to their rivals. And honestly, the biggest flaw in Illumination's stories are just the way that their stories are written. Their characters are all kind of just generic, and the writing for their stories as the film goes along really doesn't just intrigue you. And honestly, as these sequels go on, I honestly don't see the Despicable Me franchise getting any more intriguing the longer it goes on.
You want a little more?
Like Garfield, I too hate Mondays. But more importantly, I hate boring cash-ins. And who would have guessed that Garfield, of all things, would be one? If anything, at least, the movie is better than the live-action Hellspawn we got previously. If you're just looking for a Garfield film that looks like Garfield and has him in it, then yeah, I'm sure this will entertain you. But still, for me, the film is just so far detached from what Garfield actually is, that I struggle to see why this film even had to be a Garfield film. But hey, maybe there's something I'm missing. I mean, I doubt it, but maybe.
Hello! I'm anxiety. Where can I put my stuff?
A new emotion!
Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to make such a good first impression.
What do you mean, we?
Inside Out has gotten the first of its many sequels, I'm sure. Thankfully, however, though, the quality here seems to have held. Although that's not exactly out of the usual here, I'm pretty sure someone's got to wait until the 3rd Pixar sequel to actually start seeing the cracks. Anyway, Inside Out 2. It's good. The animation is still Pixar's standard perfectly practiced style, which is what you'd expect, of course. Instead, the strengths of this film lie with the characters and story. Pixar's always been good at putting interesting characters together, and that trend continues here. And more than that, the film further develops its characters alongside the themes of the story. This time round, Riley has gotten older, and she's got a whole host of new emotions to explore. Joy and the gang are back, and a whole new adventure has begun as these new emotions come together to explore a new story centering around Riley and the way that she perceives her new emotions and continues to grow. I've always believed that the Inside Out franchise has had an inherent opportunity to explore a variety of different storytelling opportunities, and with this sequel, they continue that trend by exploring these new storytelling opportunities that are given by Riley growing and developing as a person. And of course, that's great. I love to see a good story put together that actually develops on the theme of the first movie. But in saying that, I do still kind of think that the first film maybe explored the idea or premise of this story just a little bit better than this film. But still, in saying that, I will say that this film is still really pretty good. It wasn't something that overly interested me personally, but is still something that I can admit is really pretty good and does a good job with the story it's telling. And of course, I'm sure it's something that Pixar's previous animators deserve to be properly compensated for, especially considering the mountain of money this film raked in at the end of the day.
But all the things I'm afraid of, I'm most afraid of the dark.
DreamWorks really do seem to have had a lot on their plate this year, as they released 2 films and 1 cinematic abomination. Thankfully, however, though, this is one of the better ones. Orion the Dark isn't something that I expected too much from, other than a fun little adventure in the dark. And yeah, thinking of it like that, it is something that I'm sure most people will enjoy. However, beyond just being a good adventure film, the film is also a great visual experiment, in terms of its animation. Of course, DreamWorks has been experimenting with its visual style for the last few years now, and I've been someone who's been really enjoying the experimentation. And with this film, I've again really enjoyed the experiment. The film has such a unique and interesting look, and it might not be on the same level as something like Puss in Boots, but it's still pretty good. The film has a unique sculpted cartoon look, in addition to a variety of texture and lighting details that I found so interesting just watching the film. And yeah, personally, I did enjoy the animation aspect of the film a bit more than the story and character side of the film. And that's not to say that the story or characters are bad in any sense, but just something to say that they don't really stick with you after watching the film. They become a little forgettable. But again, the film is a good experiment and a fun little watch. So if you're looking for something that might interest you, or some sort of fun adventure in the dark, this might be really up your alley.
I'll never forget my first day in waterfront town, when I ran off on my own and first came upon the GlassWorks. I had never seen something so beautiful. It was magical.
Okay, I don't usually connect all that much with romantic dramas, but when they have animation as beautiful as this, the films do still manage to connect with me on some level. Seriously, this is a beautiful little animated movie from Pakistan, surprisingly, and if you have to take anything away from this video, it's that this film is definitely worth a watch if you can find it. I've seen a variety of different people attribute this to being Pakistan's Hayao Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli of films, or animated films, sorry, and yeah, I do agree with that. This film is certainly an interesting looking film. I mean, it's beautiful, and it really does have an interesting story to go along with it. This film is visually striking, and it has such an interesting narrative. It's a great anti-war film, and an interesting romantic drama. Although it is one that I think a lot of people will have difficulty finding, just because of distribution rights and everything else at the moment. But still, if you do manage to find this film, definitely give it a watch, and I'm sure you might enjoy it. And hopefully there's more in store for the future of Pakistan's Studio Ghibli.
Keep your surf off my turf!
Dinner, please. Dinner with peas in a sesame soy glaze.
This is not working at all.
Alright, okay, so, yeah. I've seen a lot of people saying recently that this franchise should have ended with the third film, and how that would have been a better ending for the story. However, I'm afraid I have to politely disagree. Not only because I think there's still more to be done with these characters and the world they inhabit, but also because I genuinely think that this film is actually kinda good. Sure, it doesn't rank highly in my ranking of the other Kung Fu Panda movies, but it does still rank highly amongst a lot of other animated sequels. Kung Fu Panda 4 might not have been exactly what I hoped for, or what others hoped for, but is still something that I think entertains and delivers. It's a fun adventure that's put together and animated well. And yeah, I have really enjoyed the way that DreamWorks has really experimented with the presentation of their films and their visual styles in recent years. And yeah, this film doesn't really do much to experiment with its visuals, or to do really much new with its animation, aside from a few visual details and effects. But still, it is put together well, and they again do play with a lot of the martial arts in this film that they've always done with a lot of the other Kung Fu Panda movies. So it is still a visually interesting film to watch, and is something that I think a lot of people will enjoy watching. Sure, this film isn't what I thought I'd get, or isn't really what I think a lot of people were expecting, but then again, I do still think that people's expectations might have been raised a little by the expectation of seeing certain characters return, which may have just given the film a little bit of a disadvantage. But the moment that you actually put those expectations aside and just watch the film, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with just how okay the film is. And sure, this film does kind of struggle a little bit with its characters, especially with its villain. And I mean, again, I think a lot of people might just be comparing the villain to some of the previous villains that we've gotten in the past. And I mean, it really doesn't help that a lot of the past villains reappear in this one. So they're encouraging the comparisons, which is probably not a great idea, but still. And I mean, this villain is okay, to say the least. And again, there's just no way she's ever going to top Shen, so I don't think any future villain is going to top Shen or Tai Lung. But hey, who knows? Maybe they'll top Shen and Tai Lung in Kung Fu Panda 7. But still, at least this film is vastly superior to Megamind and the Doom Syndicate.
Dad, did you ever worry that your power wasn't enough?
Every single day. The world needs you to become something more.
The parent, son, daughter, and/or monster baby plot has struck again. Thankfully, however, Baby Yoda, I mean Emmy, is still pretty cute. Now, if you couldn't tell, this is my first experience with an UltraMan story. And yeah, this is a pretty good first experience. I mean, I really enjoyed it. It was a good, fun superhero story, and the visuals, well, they had a brilliant stylized 3D presentation that I found fascinating, and something completely unique to anything else I've seen from the 3D space recently. The film has such a unique, stylized look. They really push the expressions and the angles of the characters and the designs of the film to create a unique look that really does stick with you. I haven't seen all that much UltraMan stuff in the past, although I'm sure that in the future I will go looking for more UltraMan stories. However, when I go looking for those stories, I'm definitely sure that I'll think of this film, largely just because of its stylized look. I mean, this film stands out, and I mean it stands out amongst so many other animated superhero films, because this film, its look directly influences how you approach the characters, and how you approach the action and the story. And that's what a good story is meant to have you do. A good animated film is meant to have you do. Really connect with the story. And this is what this film has managed to get me to do. And it's something that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I really enjoyed my first experience with UltraMan, but did still think that the villain kind of left a little to be desired. Honestly, it doesn't help that he just mainly stands in the shadows for the majority of the film, and then just shouts his motivations towards the end of the film. But still, despite that little hiccup, the film is very fun and definitely worth a watch.
So, how long do you think we'll be here? I'm not talking to you. You know what? We are so screwed!
Thought you weren't talking to me.
This is a great animated film, but as a Transformers film, it has to objectively be the best we've ever gotten. They finally got rid of all the boring human characters and actually allowed the film to focus on the main characters we actually cared about. Not just because they actively drive the plot and do the things we want to see, but also because they allow the film to actually explore the scope of its world. And yeah, a lot has been said for the writing of the story and characters, but for me, a highlight that I haven't seen enough people talk about has to be the phenomenal action and fight scene choreography. And if you know me, you know I do love a good animated fight scene, and this film certainly delivers. In addition to its great characters and fight scenes, this film also has a great animated look. It's a really interesting one. It's clearly trying to invoke the look of the toys, but still it manages to keep its own look and have its own distinct visual style. It's nothing too amazing or interesting. It's certainly not on the level of something maybe like DreamWorks or Disney, but it is still something that does look distinct from a lot of other films. It's got a lot of visual effects and a lot of great highlights and a lot of good lighting. And a lot of this really helps with the fight scenes. And honestly, the cinematography in this film is fantastic. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this aspect of the film either, but I will say that it's something that I definitely enjoyed. Another thing that I enjoyed would have to be, of course, the film's villain. And honestly, we haven't had all that many pure evil villains in animated films for some time now. I think the last one would have had to be Jack Horner, and he was great, loved him. But again, they've got another just purely evil villain in this, who is kind of a twist villain, but still manages to get the twist right, in my opinion. And honestly, once you do see the twist and the villain is revealed, the villain just gets to let loose and do whatever he wants and actually be a great villain. So much so that it's just so much fun to see him get his comeuppance in the end, even if we do see the rise of one character and the fall of another. This film really does a lot to give Transformers fans a lot of what they want to see. It's a great film that really delivers without being too fan-servicey, and still remains a good, interesting story and a fun adventure. In addition to having great animation, this film really works. Although I did feel that sometimes the music might have been a little off, but still that might just be one of my own little nitpicks, as I'm not largely a music person, and someone who really tends to focus more on the story and presentation of a film. I've never really been much of a Transformers fan when it comes to the movies, largely because they never had the interesting characters or story that I was really looking for, especially not in the Michael Bay films. That was just nowhere to be seen at all. But here, they do have that interesting story and character side of the film that really managed to keep me interested, and I'm really sure will manage to keep a lot of other people interested. Now, I hope that this film really does get a sequel, so that we can all enjoy a trip back to Cybertron in the future.
Incident report. At 0300 hours, a number of Universal Dynamics robots were lost in a typhoon. Chance of recovery, is unlikely.
This year we got two flavours of robot-centric animated films, and this one has to be my favourite. Not just because my boy Pedro Pascal gives his most entertaining performance this year in this film, but also because this film is just heartfelt, emotional, funny, and genuinely worthy of any tears you might shed in a cinema. This film really explores a variety of different ideas with its writing and animation. And it has to be said that this film is also a really pretty good adaptation of a great book as well. From what I've heard from people who have read the book, it's not so much that this film is a great adaptation of just one book, instead that it's actually a good adaptation of maybe 1.5 books from what people have said. But still, regardless of just what it's adapting, the film is still really pretty good on its own as well. Of course, this film was directed by the legendary Chris Sanders, a guy who's got a long and storied history in animation. He helped develop Lilo and Stitch, and then later on developed the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. So of course, he knows what he's doing when he's telling this type of story. The writing for the characters and story of this film is pretty on point. Of course, the film is trying to adapt a book, so of course there's going to be a lot in there for book readers, but still, for new audiences, this is going to be something that I think they're going to find genuinely pretty interesting. I thought that the writing for these characters in this film was just on point. Of course, the film is adapting a book, so some of the characters do come with established baggage, but still, they are written in a way that new viewers can actually come into the story and enjoy watching the film. And in saying this, I will say that there are maybe 1 or 2 characters that feel a little underwritten, but that doesn't subtract from the story at all. The characters still get across what they need to get across in the film, and they still present themselves in a likeable and enjoyable way. And if anything, I think that if any character's underwritten here in this film, that it will only give a chance for the creators to explore more of these characters in the future, which again I really hope that this film gets to do, just kind of like Transformers 1. But still, that's something for the future to explore. Now, back to the film. This film is brilliant. The story of this film is just as well written as the characters. Of course, we've seen this dynamic play out before in other films, but here the film is written in such a way that it keeps you interested in the story without directly comparing itself to previous stories that have already been told. So it has a generally quite interesting story that still sets itself apart from something else you might have seen before. One thing that the writing has to be commended for in this film has to be the way that it balances the two worlds and their embodiment in the two main characters of Roz and Brightbill. Both of these characters come from their own worlds, and neither one of them is presented as being perfect. Both of them have their ups and their downs, but still, they come together in this film to present a great story that is genuinely heartfelt and will quite genuinely get you tugging at your tears. But still, this film is really pretty good just for that. I'd like to say more about the story of this film, but I don't want to spoil anything, and I really want people to go out and watch the film for themselves. So just trust me, if you go out and watch this film, you will enjoy it. Now, in saying that, I'm just going to move on to the animation of this film, and I'm going to say that this film looks phenomenal. I love the look of this film. I think it looks brilliant. I've heard a few people say it looked kinda cheap, but I don't really agree with that at all. Honestly, DreamWorks has continued their experimentation with the visual look of their films, and this experimentation has continued here. And here, I think that they've gone for a very specific look, which I think they've actually managed to achieve. The film has a paint-like style, kind of similar to Puss in Boots, but still distinct from that film, enough to just be its own thing. What I think the film was trying to do with its aesthetic was create a juxtaposition between the way that Roz and Brightbill stand out amongst the natural world around them. Because of course this plays into the story and how Roz feels so out of place in the natural world and is constantly longing to get back to the human world. This film's painted aesthetic is similar to what we got in Puss in Boots, and in saying that, I think I understand where a little bit of the confusion might be coming from. Because this film has a painted aesthetic, I think some people might be confusing it with the aesthetic laid out in Puss in Boots, which was something completely unique that we hadn't seen before, which I think may have set the bar for what people expected from a film like this. The aesthetic of the two films is similar, but still distinct enough from each other that they have their own ups and downs, and this is no different here. So in fact, I actually don't agree with the people who say this film looks kinda cheap. I think that's kind of reductionist just a little bit. Instead, I think that this film was actually going for the type of aesthetic that it really wanted. Again, I think that this film has an aesthetic that so perfectly represents the story it's trying to tell. And in fact, I think there are some standout visual moments in this film that are so stunning that it's hard to actually forget about them. And just on a rewatch, there are so many standout visual aspects of this film that really get me thinking about the film just over and over. Because of course, I think that this film does look brilliant. Everything from the characters, to the settings, to the props, I think these all look great. Of course, the idea of the painted and watercolour aesthetic starts with Puss in Boots. However, this film gives us another take on that idea, which does set itself apart from other films. And in addition to these painted effects, you also have a variety of 2D effects and a unique number of stylized 3D concepts, which really come together to create the film's unique look. And yeah, because of all of this, The Wild Robot has to be my favourite animated film of 2024. We've really seen a wide variety of stories come out of the industry this year, and yeah, there's been a lot to enjoy and rejoice over, but also a lot to hope for. So here's hoping for next year, and that things will only get better for the industry and everyone in it. And in saying that, at least we can say that the indie space is doing quite well. Now, with all of this said, this has been my ranking for 2024 and all of the animated films that I've seen this year. Now, if you've got anything you want to say about the ranking or any films that you wanted me to know about, let me know in the comments below. And if you're looking for more animated rankings, be sure to check the description for Cellspex's channel, because of course I'm sure she'll have her ranking out soon, and that it'll be a lot longer and a lot better than mine. Now, I hope everybody enjoyed the ranking in the video, and has been sure to let me know of any films they want me to check out in the comments below. But until then, please everybody like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one come 2025. Bye!